Donald Trump just gave a legendarily long speech, and we're going to give you the summary of it. And yes, the biggest mystery has been solved. Melania did actually join Donald Trump, and look at that. They're actually even slightly kissing, okay, and touching each other. So she did not appear the whole convention. There was people started to worry. She even going to come for Donald Trump's speech, but she did. Okay, so Donald Trump's speech was a little bit different than last time around. Last time it was all fire and brimstone, and it was a very dark speech. They tried to make this one lighter. So he spent a long time explaining the shooting in the beginning. I totally get it, makes sense. I thought it was relatively effective. As with everything in the speech, he took too long, but overall it was, relatively dramatic, and he, earned that. And I thought it was over the top, but a good moment when he went to the firefighters' uniform for Corey, who died at the rally, and talked about how much money that they had raised for the family, et cetera. A little bit of an iconic moment connecting, firefighter uniform and a field in Pennsylvania gives you some subconscious feeling about 9/11, two tragedies in American history, and connects those things a little bit. I don't know if they intended it, but I got that sense, and so relatively powerful. Best part of the speech. He talked about inflation later, and so that's very normal to be expected. And obviously there was a big problem in Biden's term, so he brought that up. And then immigration was a huge part of the speech. And I think that one of the things that they've decided, and it was throughout the RNC, that they're going to try to humanize Donald Trump more, make him softer, less mean, less crazy, more stable, more sane, more of a family person, more of a decent person. And almost everyone mentioned that in their speeches. So obviously that was the theme of the campaign. After the shooting, he's a different man. But the one piece that they decided they were going to allow themselves was demagoguery on immigration. And so that's where they were the harshest, and talking about rapes and murders, and it's this administration's fault, and record breaking and disaster, and it's destroyed the country, et cetera. JD Vance pounded away at that theme. Donald Trump pounded away at that theme. So they've decided that's a safe area to continue to be very harsh and to do demagoguery. But then after that, he should have ended the speech exactly when he talked about that immigration chart that he was showing when he got shot at the rally. And
that would have been a perfect punctuation.
Yeah, because you're both talking about immigration, which is your relative political strength according to the polls, right? And the moment that you were shot at the rally, and because he looked at the chart, the shooter missed. So it would have been perfect, but instead he went on for like another painful hour, and the rest of the speech was so meandering, so uninteresting. Nothing new, like weird stories about personal things in his life, and how he liked sail ships because of their shapes, and he started to go one by one on how much he liked every speaker. And I'm like, please stop talking about every single speaker that appeared tonight. And then he went to family stories about attending revival, rallies of Billy Graham, et cetera. And it just would not end. It went past midnight, literally went on to the next day. So a speech so long, you've never seen anything like it, right? And there is some truth to that. Look, last positive thing I'll say about it is, the one thing that Trump is good at is giving you false hope. Now, we know from his track record that it's false, and I can prove to you in 18 different ways. Like, he says he's working for the average guy and then does giant corporate tax cuts. And even in the middle of the speech, he bragged about his corporate tax cuts and said, I brought back all these billions of dollars. What he didn't tell you is that was the one tax cut that Sheldon Adelson wanted most, which is who was Donald Trump's biggest donor. Gave him $100 million in 2016 and 2020. And that's because most of Sheldon Adelson's money was made in China, where most of his casinos are. And in order to bring that money back, he needed a giant tax cut. They took that tax repatriation tax from 35% to 8.5%, saving Sheldon Adelson billions of dollars, which more than paid off for his $200 million that he gave to Donald Trump. So he's bragging about a thing where he actually filled the swamp rather than draining the swamp and cost American taxpayers, and it was a disaster while he's pretending to be a populist who's fighting for the average American. But he does give them hope. He talks about how he's gonna do all these amazing things. Yes, he does too many superlatives, but it does drill home to people that him as this fighter for the average American, fighter for the workers. It's not backed up by reality, but it is effective especially when the other side these days has just not brought a lot of hope. When you listen to a Biden speech, I don't know that anyone walks away going, yeah, I'm so pumped up, man. The country's gonna be great. The future's gonna be wonderful. And these guys are fighting, and Biden and these Democrats are fighting so hard for me. Let's be honest, that's not happening. Now, we're gonna have a new candidate soon for the Democrats, but that is what Trump does best, false hope. Michael.
Yeah, and false hope and laundry lists. And I should say that everybody who does this does that. That's what convention speeches are. That's what State of the Union speeches are. It is false hope. He delivers it, and he has his minions that eat it up, right? There's something in this speech for every single person in America, and there's some things that are targeted, and there's some things that are more vague. The firefighter thing, obviously, he was affected by what happened on that day. It was a supporter of his, but also Biden has had the firefighters unions for his entire political career. He had them in 2016 or 2020, and he's going to have them again now. But it's just everything is political, but everything to Donald Trump is real, and it's also superlative. One thing I will say, this has been a successful, I think until tonight, a successful convention. Milwaukee pulled it off. I think you have seen Republican unity, which was not surprising to me. I mean, even their division was so slight. Nikki Haley won just a handful of delegates compared to all the delegates that were here at this convention. So it wasn't as if this was a crazily divided convention or convention floor. But I do think that when you saw tonight, Look, it was a good speech. It was a fine speech. I thought it was a very droning speech. I thought it was a sleepy speech. Cenk and I talked about that a little bit, about when he went on and off teleprompter. Doesn't mean that this matters, but I think a lot of people watch these things as you watch closing arguments in a trial. The first person who closes, if you are supporting the plaintiff and the plaintiff's and the defendant's cases is closed first, you think, oh my God, they actually have kind of a good case, right? But to have that second close, which the Democrats have and they know is so important in this election, I think is quite important this year. So it's going to be 5 weeks or a month or however long it is. I guess he'll be giving, whoever is giving the speech for the Democrats, whoever the nominee is, he or she will be giving that speech on the 22nd of August. And when they give that speech, this will be 5 weeks earlier. So there will be a separation to what happened. All of the focus right now is going to go onto the Democrats, because it's whether the president steps down, when he steps down, how smooth it is, who the nominee is, who the nominee selects. All the money and all the attention is going to go to the Democrats pretty soon, and then they have an opportunity. But this, for what they needed to do here in Wisconsin, was a fine speech. It was a fine convention. It was actually a very good convention, I thought, logistically. But there were also funny messages in this convention. There were curious plays to different demographics. And again, tonight, as Cenk said, as you said, there was something for everybody here. And he's great at over-promising because he's a politician, but also great at providing hope. And that's something the Democrats, they need to listen to what Cenk said in his analysis, which is that they have to be able to be a more hopeful party, which I do think a change of candidate will help, dramatically.
Yeah, and in rounding up the RNC, I'll say that I think Susan Wiles' campaign manager is doing a brilliant job. And what she's doing is keeping them on message. After the shooting, Donald Trump is a changed man. He's no longer crazy and unhinged and all the things that you're worried about with him. He's now a sane, reasonable person who's the victim of this shooting, and that you should, empathize with. And he's not the guy you knew, because she knows 55% of the country doesn't like him.
Yeah.
So she's got to change that. Almost every speaker told a personal story about how wonderful Donald Trump was behind the scenes. Reporting is that's not at all true. Donald Trump behind the scenes is not known as a warm person at all. But they're doing marketing here. So for their marketing, everybody's like, and some of the stories were so absurd. Our favorite one was Sarah Huckabee Sanders telling the story of how her 4-year-old ran towards the president, and she thought, oh, what a warm moment. But then the 4-year-old ran around him and hugged her instead because she's the 4-year-old's mom, right?
Right.
And I'm like, wait, I know you're trying to make Trump seem warm, but what, how does that help Trump, right? But they were all stretching and stretching to try to somehow come up with a warm story about Donald Trump. And that's because that's the theme of the convention. Don't worry, Trump is not unstable, right? He's going to be okay, and he's a different man now.
Right.
So, and because of the shooting, they also made it softer. They still demagogued on immigration on almost every speech, and but overall, it was a professionally run convention
for sure,
where they got the marketing that they wanted out of it. But it was so smooth that I'm curious to see how many people watched it.
Well, I certainly watched it till it's through its end. And these things are, you can look at it if you're a Democrat and you can say, you can look at this and say, oh my God, look at this hall. Trump himself said he's never seen such a full hall. Every convention is exactly the same. It's this many people, it's this many delegates, it's this much press. It's exactly the same. And so finally, JD and Usha Vance now on stage. They hadn't been for a little while. But the whole part of watching this stuff and seeing that this happens, it's their night. It's their convention, and they, like every other convention, it was pulled off. And I think that there is a lot of optimism in that room. But in every convention I've ever been to, there's been optimism, and I've been to some, where there should have been none. And the least optimistic I went to actually was probably Trump in Cleveland, and of course he ended up winning that election.
Yeah. Okay. So last two things I'll say. Number one is that, this is the same exact size as any other convention. I don't know. I do know why. He can't help himself. Trump constantly brags about things he shouldn't brag about. If he said, which he did earlier, that this is the most excited convention, I don't know about that, but it's close. Like, they were very, very excited. They're jubilant. They love Trump, especially after the assassination attempt. They're on cloud nine that he survived, and because of Biden's troubles, they think they're gonna win. A very excited convention. Just leave it at that. You don't have to pretend that it was larger than any other convention.
Well, he's never gonna leave it at that. He's never ever gonna leave it at that. You know that.
Right. But when you, last thing about the convention overall is, in driving home the point that they're for the average American worker, they brought in Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters, on Monday night, the first night. And that was the one speech that stood out. And so the press didn't cover it that much, but the rest of the speeches were very standard fare, especially because they were trying to humanize Trump. So it made it a little bit more boring that they didn't do too many attacks. There was an odd moment here or there, like where the governor of West Virginia, Jim Justice, said that if Trump loses, we'll get unhinged. Not a good thing to say, right?
Well, he also he's the guy that brought his dog on stage.
Yeah. But Sean O'Brien's speech stood out because it was one of the most progressive speeches I've ever seen at a convention, and attacked corporate rule at a Republican convention. But if anyone watched the speech, I think they might be affected by it. And I did talk to some right wingers here at the convention who were like, yeah, I was surprised by it. And then the delegates were like, I thought he made good points, which I love to hear, right? So, and the fact that he connected the global elites that they're so angry at to corporate executives and corporate rule was brilliant and really necessary. Some of the right-wing media I talked to did not like the speech.
No, and many of the delegates I spoke to did not like that speech either.
But as a matter of theme and the message you're trying to deliver, I think it was really smart.
Yeah.
So that stood out among all the speeches. And finally, I know you guys were all waiting for the result of our live poll as we were doing play-by-play of the speech, and send us to the DNC, tyt.com/team. We do play-by-play of all the speeches at the RNCs and DNCs, and obviously we did for Trump. And we did this fun poll, does Trump sound low energy during his speech? And it was neck and neck throughout, but at the end, with nearly 4,000 votes, and this is just in our chat, right? And still people got into it. because they needed something fun
Right.
in the last brutal hour of the speech. And he wavered. When he goes off prompter, he's high energy. When he goes on prompter, low energy.
But there was a long stretch at the end that was prompter.
And that made the difference. 51-49. It came in as low energy.
Stolen election. Stolen election.
Stop the steal. Stop the steal. But instead, what we're going to do is stop the show. So we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Thank you to our members and to everyone who contributed at tyt.com/team for sending us to the RNC. It was an amazing 4 days. We can't thank you enough, and we hope you enjoyed the coverage and the interesting interviews that we got out of it. So,
and also, I think it's worth mentioning how well we were treated here for, being not the typical right-wing media that we're surrounded by. So
yeah, so 2 or 3 incidents where it got a little out of hand, but other than that, enormously welcoming.
Yeah.
And so credit to the folks here for welcoming us. And what they said over and over again is, you guys are the only left wingers here. And so, they appreciated that we bothered to come to cover it and to have conversations with them. And by the way, that's actually how you unite a country.
Yeah.
You actually talk to the other side, learn why they think what they think, and begin to have those conversations that not today, but hopefully sometime in the future begins to heal us.
And one last thing I want to say is, the next month, you guys are big political buffs. The next month could be the most interesting political month of all of our lives. And that's saying something. There's going to be a lot of upheaval on the Democratic side. It's going to be super interesting, whatever happens. The convention, if we're lucky enough to go there, will be something that likely will be an unusual convention. And the one thing that underscores all conventions is they're pretty usual.
Michael, before I went to bed last night, really late, I sent that same exact tweet. And I said, we went from the dullest election, these two guys again, right. Not these two guys again, right? To maybe the most exciting election of our lives.
Yeah, and real history, whatever you think of the people that are going to be selected if the president stands down or what happens in this election, it's history. This will be an election that people will talk about for a very long time, almost assuredly.
The DNC could be amazing. We hope to see you there. Good night.
God bless the United States.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.